Hi, HR Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we discuss the future of work with today's most innovative and successful people leaders. Today, we have a special guest on the show. We're joined by Chester Elton, who's a 5 times best-selling author, executive coach, keynote speaker, who helps leaders create high-performing, all-in cultures. Chester, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks for the invite.
Thanks for joining me. I said before the show, it was a bit of a surreal moment for me, considering that we kind of walked past each other when I was a 17-year-old kid in my first job in the corporate world, and you were keynoting the HR Directors Business Summit, which I had my first job at, and I think I'd been there for 3 or 4 months at the time. So it's quite surreal to be here with you, I think 13 years later, having you as a guest on the show. So it's time really does fly. And I remember very clearly one of my team members coming up to me saying, there's a guy in the room doing a keynote and he's throwing toy carrots into the audience. And I thought they were joking at the time, and I realized that now actually it was yourself, Chester.
Yeah. It's funny how time comes around and the world gets smaller and smaller, right? We keep crossing paths. It was a lot of fun. I have great memories of those conferences in Birmingham, throwing frisbees, throwing carrots. I never leave home without a carrot.
Oh, you got one. There you go. For everyone listening, there's a carrot on screen right now. You'd have to watch the video version to see it. Amazing. Well, look, before we jump in, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself personally and your journey to where we are today.
Sure. Well, I do everything with my wonderful friend and co-author, Adrian Gostick. And so we've written 10 books together. We've sold 1.6 million copies, 5-time New York Times bestseller and Wall Street Journal bestseller list. It's really fun. We've been named a bunch of lists. We're global gurus in leadership and organizational culture. I got named to the EE 101 group, which I think is really great because they list you alphabetically. So you don't know if you're number 1 or number 101. I think
you're at the top though, right? So you're good.
Yeah, I cracked the top 101. That's all I know, And then a fun company called Engagely actually named their 100 top HR influencers and made that list too. But Chris, of all the things that I'm most proud of, it's that I'm the proud father of 4 exceptional children. All the more exceptional because they've now grown up and left home. So it's
well, we're at 2 ends of the spectrum. Your children have just left. I've just had my first.
There you go. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Bring good luck.
Yeah.
We actually have 2 grandchildren now. I've got a little 4-year-old grandson named Lucas Chester, which pleases me.
Oh, wow.
And little Clara Iris, who was just born in January. So you've got a lot of road ahead of you. And you know what? It only gets better from here.
Today was Robin's first day at nursery. So that was a whole new moment today. Dropping her off at the nursery was a bit of an emotional day for my wife and I. More so my wife, who had a bit of a cry, which is understandable. I was feeling emotional, but I was like, oh, "Stay strong, Chris. Stay strong. It's going to be okay. You're going to be back in 7 hours. It'll be okay." But it was quite difficult, having to leave her with them and sort of go off to work and stuff like that. But
moments to remember, no doubt about it.
Definitely there. But so tell us a bit more about what you're working on now, because I've known your work for so long now. I've been following you for so many years now. And I suppose when we first spoke about this, the key thing that kept coming up was, what skills do leaders need to increase employee engagement and, create an all-in culture? What is an all-in culture? Let's start there.
Yeah.
What do you mean by an all-in culture?
I love the question. We started our work in recognition, hence the carrot versus the sticks. And we found great productivity from that when people felt valued, right? They would stay longer and be more committed and so on. The all-in culture came about because as we started to work more deeply with clients, we realized fairly quickly that if you didn't get the culture right, the recognition didn't matter. The culture had to be right. And we looked at these dimensions. We looked at over 300,000 engagement surveys and published that research in our book, All In. We talk about an all-in culture where people believe what they do matters and they make a difference. And then we add, and when they make a difference, somebody noticed it and celebrated it. If you've got those key elements in place, you get that emotional attachment to work. Not just what we do and how we do it. Everyone should be able to explain that. The bigger question is the why, and that's that emotional connection. So my definition of an all-in culture very simply is, I believe what I do matters, I make a difference, and when I make a difference, somebody noticed it, said thank you, and celebrated that effort. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So when you work with leaders, then where do you start? Because I think they'll all agree with you, but I think a lot of them, they get back to the office and say, well, where do I even start in trying to achieve this?
I think you've always got to start with the leader, because it's the leader that sets the parameters for the culture. And the way the leader conducts him or herself gives everyone else permission to act the same way. So we developed in our research a wonderful online tool called the Motivators Assessment. You've probably taken like a Myers-Briggs or a DISC, which I think are very valuable. Who am I, right? And then Gallup did that wonderful Strength Finders. What am I good at? We saw there was a bit of a gap. Knowing yourself, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? So we created a very simple online assessment, 100 questions that let you know in rank order, what are your top motivators at work? So I think you've got to start with the leader to really understand not only where are my talents, where are my skills, what am I passionate about? And then bleed that into your team. I think you've really got to sit back as a leader and ask the questions, as you and I talked before the podcast, your journey of finding your purpose and your passion, right? So why do we do what we do? What is the benefit? How is it impacting me? How is it impacting my team? Bigger than that, how am I impacting my communities and the world at large? And once you start having what we call in an all-in culture, that burning platform, that noble cause, that's where you've really got to make sure you know exactly why you do what you do so that you can disseminate that energy and that purpose and that noble cause throughout the organization. That's where we start.
Do you do this one-on-one or in a group setting? What do you think works best?
Yeah, both really. When you think about how you influence a culture, and you've seen this through the workshops you do in roundtables, you want to change a culture quickly, you change the leader. And often in mergers and acquisitions, leaders will come in, they'll bring their team. You hear that on that immediately changes the scope of the culture. So people say, well, you laugh, you organized all these wonderful conferences. People would come up to me in conferences and say, oh man, you've got to talk to my CEO. Our culture is toxic. And I said, you know what? Your leader will never talk to me because your culture is toxic. Yeah. I think what you find in your work is the most engaged people you work with are people that value their culture, want to keep that great culture, and if anything, deepen it and enhance it. They understand that culture is one of the few differentiators left, right? Leadership and culture. Everything else can be replicated. Products, services, pricing, locations, and so on. Barriers to entry are getting lower and lower and lower. What are the differentiators? Culture, very hard to replicate. Good leaders, you can never have too many.
Yeah. So when you speak to these organizations and work with the businesses, what's the main challenge that the leaders come to you with?
It's really funny. Adrian and I were just talking about this the other day. What is the future of leadership? And we say the future of leadership is soft. And what I mean by that, it's soft skills. Often you'll hear leaders, hey, I love mankind. It's people I can't stand.
Yeah.
So the biggest challenge is, I think, 99 out of 100 leaders will agree, it's managing people. Getting the right people in the right jobs, not just doing what they're good about, what they're passionate about, getting that emotional engagement, making sure that they're on task, that we're not burning them out, that we've created career paths. I mean, it is always so people-centric. The differentiator, and you've heard this in HR for forever, people are your biggest differentiator. Yeah, and they're also your biggest headache and your biggest challenge, and everything that comes with that. You've now got a child. Trust me, you will understand that at an emotional level, ways you never thought but humanly possible.
Yeah. So what are the skills then you think the leaders need to increase employee engagement?
I really do think they've got to learn simple skills that in the past served them well, that no longer will serve them well. We were talking about our good friend Marshall Goldsmith. I love the title of his book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There.
Yeah.
Business is continuing to change and grow and develop, and so do leaders. Old school used to be, look, we treat everybody the same because that's fair. There was this sort of, the rules were the rules and there were no exceptions. The new school thinking is we treat everyone fairly and differently. We in our research that we published in one of our books called The Best Team Wins, we looked at the 5 dimensions of modern day teams over and above the obvious. having a great purpose, having trust in the organization, and so on. And one of the biggest dimensions in the modern day workplace, well, two actually, is this multi-generational workforce. And understanding that, millennials and now Gen Z and Gen X and baby boomers and the few traditionalists that are left, that, they react differently. You communicate differently to them. And then with a global workforce where you've got differences in language and culture and, time zones, that you've really got to, good leaders are focusing sometimes on that. The extraordinary leaders really take the time to manage to the one. So they understand that people are going to be treated differently and that that's not unfair. That's actually more than fair, right? Mm-hmm. And to understand those cultural differences, those generational differences, so that you take the time to really have a one-on-one relationship. Again, old school was more like, look, leave your personal life at the door. I'm your boss. I'm not your friend. And I'm not advocating that every great leader is, Facebook friends and, planning holidays with all the team. Yeah. What I'm saying is they know them on a personal level. They know them well enough to know that I've got, Chris who's had a new child, the dynamic of how we're going to work with him and the time he's going to be able to dedicate to us, it has changed, and we're going to do that. I will tell you an organization that does this brilliantly is American Express. My son actually works there, and they're very focused on leadership development. They're very focused on the employee engagement piece. They've just changed a lot of their policies. When my little granddaughter was born in January, their policy is now you're in the UK and you've got a lot of followers in Europe. They'll say, well, of course this makes sense. In the US, if you got a week or 2 weeks paternity leave, that was considered very genuine.
I know. I realized recently when I began on paternity leave, and I was told how in the US I was the flexibility. I was shocked.
Yes.
How bad. I was like, really? I thought we had it bad, and then I realized we have it great in the grand scheme of things.
I will tell you, when my daughter Cassandra was born, I got the weekend. Like I wasn't at work anyway.
That was mad.
He was born on Friday, they said, take the weekend, see you Monday, right?
No, they didn't really. Did they really say that?
Absolutely.
Oh
absolutely.
My God.
If I wanted time off, I took vacation time.
You had to use your vacation time. That is shocking.
So let's get back to American Express.
Sure.
They changed their policy a while ago where they give you 5 months.
Wow.
And I will tell you that in full pay, all bonuses, and that time that my son had with his daughter, they have a relationship now that's extraordinary. He had a chance to recalibrate and refresh and really bring his family together. Well, in returning, do you think he's all in? In fact, while he was on holiday, he taught himself to code and enhanced his ability to deliver over and above what he was previously doing. So, so now you can see, when that happens, that was a people-centric policy that drove extraordinary employee engagement to my son and everyone else at American Express that's got that. In fact, it's really funny. People are saying, I think we were only going to have 2 kids. We might have 4 at this point.
Oh, really? Wow, because it even changes. Of course it does. Well, first of all, it's an amazing story and fantastic from American Express, and your son's never going to forget that. He's going to go above and beyond in the organization, and if there are opportunities that come up outside that may tempt him, he's just going to think back to that time that he's had with your grandson, and also the fact that he came back with more skills. It's not just a passion, but it came back with a new set of skills, which is now which is an incredible set of skills, might I add, for the future of work, right? Couldn't get better than that as well. So what an amazing story. And again, I was saying to myself and my wife, we had that same dilemma for talking about her work because there wasn't much flexibility, and we're like, do you just stay at home now and not go back at all? We shouldn't even be having this conversation of them giving flexibility. And I'm lucky enough that I own my own business, but I can't imagine having 2 weeks of Robin.
Again, the relationship with your people and the way you attract and retain talent is the compact between the employer and the employee has been completely rewritten. Mm-hmm. This idea from the mailroom to the boardroom, that is so far gone. The fact that you would consider anyone staying at the same organization for 30 years. Well, in fact, that there would be the same organization for 30 years now is almost unthinkable. Organizations will often say, people are our greatest resource. If they are, how are you investing in them? Another wonderful case study that we took a look at was Texas Roadhouse restaurants. Not something that you have in the UK. They have almost, 400 or 600 restaurants? Lots.
A lot.
They have an employee relief fund. So, you've got dishwashers, you've got bartenders, you've got servers, you've got, janitors and so on. And a lot of this is, these aren't six-figure jobs. They're working hard. They're good, hard-working folks. They've got families to support. When there's an unexpected expense, whether it be hospital or a severe winter where all of a sudden your heating bills are higher, you can petition to the organization, to the employee board, and they will pay those bills for you. Wow. Well, knowing that you've got a company that cares enough about you to actually put money up against it, right? Mm-hmm. They had, the hurricanes and natural disasters that hit every country now. They had a couple of restaurants that were wiped out in Texas. They paid all those employees' wages throughout the regeneration. They arranged for low-interest loans for them to rebuild their homes. They made sure that they had the money and the resources to not only make sure they could pay their bills, that they could get back up on their feet. Well, these people come back to work. How engaged do you think they are? Now, I know these are examples we're going to the extreme to make a point. What I'm saying is that when you are a people-centric organization, and those are the big things, and you're also doing the little things. You're letting people work from home on Fridays so they can have a little more flexibility. You're helping supplement their education. You're maybe supplementing their daycare. An organization down in Florida, a call center, they've got a child daycare center at the facility so that parents don't have to drop their kids off at 6:30 to be at work by 7:30, and they're right there. They can go have lunch with their kids and so on. It was a huge expense in the beginning, paid back in reduction in turnover in less than 2 years.
You think of the expense of actually losing those people, it's not a huge expense at all. Right. everything we're talking about right now, I know they're big examples, but the expense of losing those people, when you look at it on the grand scheme of things, the cost it was to hire them in the first place, and everything else that goes along with it, it's not at all.
As my son, when he was just little, used to say, "Dad, everything's math."
Yeah, that's definitely wise words as well. So are there any other organizations that stand out to you? I know you've done a lot of research in this. Any other sort of examples you can share?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot with restaurants lately. There's a restaurant here called Golden Corral. It's a buffet style.
Sounds like it. Sounds great.
Yeah, Golden Corral, the best buffet in the USA is their motto. And this is, again, over and above is their charitable work. They saw a need for military families. A lot of charities focused on the warriors, focused on the families in general. And about 10 years ago, they took a hard look and said, there's not a lot of work being done for the children of these military families. And if you've got friends that have served in the military, you know that they can move around quite a bit. If they've seen active duty, they can come back traumatized, they can come back ill or injured, and some don't come back. And so they looked at an opportunity to do something for those families, and what they came up with was summer camp. I don't know if you ever went to summer camp.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
And so they've looked at, they've got 19 of these camps all over the United States.
Wow.
23 sessions. So at some camps they do more than one session. And you can send your kid. Now they have a criteria: wounded, ill, injured, or fallen. Those families take priority. And they've got like 4,000 kids this summer that
really
go to camp for a week for free.
Wow.
They raise money in their restaurants. They raise money through their vendors. They raise money through, foundations and charitable. And I'm actually on their board of advisors. They were gracious enough to invite me. And just last Friday, I was down in Greensboro, North Carolina at Watkins Camp with about 120 of these kids. And, Chris, you want to say, I want to be proud of where I work. Right. And when you're proud of where you work, you don't slough off. You don't take unnecessary time. You show up and you give of your best self every day. Well, I brought a friend of mine down from Montreal. He's got a recognition company up there called Rideau, and he's become quite an accomplished artist. So here's what we did. your news feed, 90% of it is news. You look at your phone and you think, well, I should just kill myself. The world is going to hell in a little mess.
I don't watch the news most of the time.
Right. Good for you. And that's why you're such a happy fellow,
Yes.
So I talked to him about it and he said, hey, I've been doing these collaborative paintings. We should do it with the kids. So for 3 years now, he brings down all these canvases and each kid gets to paint its own canvas. And then we do a collaborative painting. We take these big canvases and the kids get to paint whatever. Mm-hmm. And one canvas is about family, another canvas is about friends, another canvas is about, duty and honor, and they just paint. And then he takes it back to his workshop, his studio. He varnishes it all up. He fills in some of the gaps. And then at the big annual conference for all the franchisees and all the restaurant owners, they auction them off. And of course, the money goes back in to help fund another camp for the next year. I will tell you that the restaurants and the employees that volunteer to go to these camps, I mean, those are things you never forget because these kids, years later, they've got the number. Everything's math. They've got the numbers. When they've gone to those camps, now they've got a network of kids like them. Military kids that get that, when you've got a parent that's got PSTD, it's different. Mm-hmm. When you've got a parent that comes back missing a limb, it's different, right? They've got illnesses that you only get in Afghanistan or whatever. And now they've got a network of friends and it's reduced their stress. They're doing better in school. They're better with their families.
They don't feel alone as well.
Exactly. They've got a whole network. Well, it's so funny because we go to these things and I know you've done some wonderful charitable work as well. They always say, oh, thank you so much for your show. Oh, thank you so much for being here. And you walk in and you go, I don't think you get it.
Yeah.
I got back way more. It was an honor to be there. And those are the kinds of things in great organizations. They've got a great noble cause. They focus on their employees. They give back to their communities.
Why aren't there are other companies like American Express doing more things like this?
Yeah, again, it's investment, and it's interesting. I've started to do more one-on-one coaching, as an executive coach, which I'm enjoying immensely. And the whole coaching profession has really come around 180 degrees. When I was your age in business, if an executive got a coach, it was like, whoa. There was sort of the last ditch effort to change.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
It was like, well, he's got a coach. It's nice knowing him,
It's crazy when you say that because you think of some of the most, I'm a big sports fan, and you look at the most successful athletes out there, they all have coaches. And I never understand, and I have coaches, both business. I have people that I have coaches for sports I play, and I do have people, advisors in business as well. And I don't know what I would do without them in many cases, I'll be honest. They are my go-to. So it seems crazy that once upon a time that was the case. And it still is really in some cases.
A lot of leaders are not as self-aware as they probably should be. Right?
Which is why they need a coach even more.
Exactly. And I look back at my career and say, gosh, if I had a coach, if I had someone to mentor me, I would have been so much more effective because so often it's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day. Mm-hmm. And as you are doing more with less and taking on more responsibilities than you probably should and really hard charging every day, you get caught up in the fact that, look, I just need to get it done. And, oh, by the way, I'm always right. We're going to do it my way. So this self-awareness and having coaches and, as simple as literally an hour a month can make such a huge difference because you've got a sounding board. You can pick very specific things that you want to work on. You can bring stakeholders in. You can get that feedback or feed forward that we like to talk about and make progress. One of the best things that happened to me is I had a executive coach for about 8 months to work with me and my team, and the benefits were phenomenal. Simple things that, we use the expression common sense uncommonly practiced, And so again, investing in your people, making sure that you've got the right people in the right jobs, passionate about what they're doing, mentors and coaches to get there. And I would also say one of the very best practices is career paths. I love leaders that ask the question, where do you want to be 2 to 3 years from now? Or in some cases 6 months to a year from now, with mobility in the workplace being what it is. Having those what we call aspirational conversations with your people. What do you think you do well? What are your biggest contributions to the team? What kind of resources do you need? Where do you want to be 2 to 3 years from now? I love leaders that ask 2 very simple questions. How are you doing? And they mean it. And how can I help? And when you've got those servant leaders that really do care about their people, want to know how to best manage to the one there, create that career path, that engagement, it doesn't get any better than that. To your point, though, employee engagement, I think, is at an all-time high. And it's because we have so many leaders that we have just promoted and said, figure it out. Well, you know what? You're not going to get that right. It's the rare leader that, is going to take all that time to invest in herself or invest in himself and read all those books and try to figure it out and bring in, their network. So often we're just trying to survive the day,
Yeah.
And again, so that when we come back to culture, right? That's a culture that breeds leadership, that breeds engagement, that takes the time to really invest. And those are the cultures that are going to continue to win over time.
Completely agree with you. One of the other things that you just reminded me of, and I'm hearing it every single day now from our audience, is how they can prepare, especially from the HR executives, how they can prepare and find leaders that can lead in a VUCA world.
It surely is. And, one of the things that we love to give the leaders that we coach and the teams that we, workshop and so on, is to get very simple daily habits. One of the things that we worked on specifically with leaders is this idea of assume positive intent. In the new work that we've been working around leadership, we interviewed the CEO of Best Buy, this big retailer here in the States, and he said, look, I may be naive. I just assume that everybody comes to work wanting to do a good job. I don't think there's that many people that wake up and say, my goal today is to screw up as many times as possible. In fact, if I haven't screwed up 4 times before lunch, I'm not doing my job. And so he says, let's assume positive intent, that people are trying to do a good job and they make a mistake. And that's okay. What did we learn from the mistake? What could we put in place so we don't make those mistakes again? And let's move forward. Gary Ridge is a guy that you should have on your podcast. He is the CEO of WD-40. I know you have a can in your house.
And I've also, that's not the first time that someone told me I need to have him on the show. 3 or 4 people now have said to me I have to have him on the show. So I'll make it happen.
It's Gary, Garry. He's this delightful Aussie who now lives in San Diego. Good choice. And, he talks about we don't have mistakes, we have learning opportunities. Now, I'll give you a little insight into WD-40. They have a tribal culture. So we're in this tribe together. It's all about supporting and helping each other. And again, we're going to make mistakes. What did we learn? Well, WD-40 literally stands for water displacement 40th try. So
it's how it stands for. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, you say, well, I think about WD-40. What,
you never spray WD-40 once, though, do you? Let's be honest. So,
We always laughed that when you send your kids off to university, you give them a roll of duct tape and a can of WD-40.
Yeah.
If it moves and it shouldn't, it's duct tape. If it doesn't move and it should, it's WD-40, and that will solve 90% of your problems in life. Right?
Yeah.
Well, Gary says, look, they had 39 formulas that they tried that just weren't good enough. On the 40th try, they got the formula they wanted. So baked into the organization's name is this idea that you're going to fail. So I love that. Now, a real practical tip to your listeners. We found this amazing leader down in Dallas, Texas, that works for Avis Budget Rental Car. His name's Carlos Aguilera. And he actually just got promoted. I think he manages more people now. At the time, it was about 400 people, various airports and kiosks and hotels, right? And he said, you know what? There are a lot of little things that are going right every day that keep our doors open. Our people are doing all the little things every day to keep our doors open. Unfortunately, as leaders, we consider ourselves problem solvers, right? So if I'm a problem solver, what am I looking for?
Problems.
I'm looking for problems. I'm looking for, hey, you did that wrong. Hey, we need to do this better. Hey, that was a mistake. Hey. Well, who wants that leader to show up?
Yeah.
Right? So he has this very simple mechanism. He puts 10 coins in his left pocket. And he sets a goal to have 10 positive interactions with his people every day, right? And the way he keeps track is he moves a coin from his left pocket to his right pocket. And it's the discipline that leaders lack, right? The idea is great. It's the discipline. Will you actually do it, right? So he says, if I've got, 8 pennies or 8 coins in my left pocket, by the time I get to lunch, I'm not doing my job. So think about it, Chris. He's dropping little texts. He's calling people up. He's writing a little note. He's bringing the team together. He's calling people out, Well, now when you have to have a tough conversation, right? Somebody's made a mistake, right? Do you think they're going to listen to him?
Yeah,
of course they are. He's got this bank of goodwill. He's not just here to tear you up and tear you down. He's there to build you up and to make sure. And that's the kind of coaching you're going to take. So we've talked a lot at the 10,000-foot level, lots of case studies. I'm telling you, listeners, put 10 coins in your left pocket or wherever you've got a reservoir where you can keep, and you start doing that every day. You will build a positive culture, because positive cultures are what people want to join.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, at the end of the day, Chris, what does everybody want? Whether they're, cleaning up after patients in a hospital or they're captains of industry, you know what? We all want the same thing. We just want to be happy. Mm-hmm. We want to have a job that's going to pay our bills, that we can feel good about going to and telling our friends about. We want to be able to take a holiday with our families. We want to be able to buy a house. We want to be able to provide for our kids, right? We want to be happy. So this idea of creating a positive workplace where I can be happy at work, of all our research, Krish, my favorite data point is when you are happy and engaged at work, you are 150% more likely to be happy in your personal life. Mm-hmm. I had a job at one point where I was so miserable, my wife took me aside. This is where it's important to marry above your station, which I clearly did, right? And she said, look, I don't care what you do. You're just not doing this anymore.
It's so funny. I had the same conversation with my wife in my kitchen, and she told me to quit my job and start. She was like, stop talking. The exact words were, if I have to hear you talk about this one more time, I'm going to go crazy. Stop talking about it and just quit your job and start something new and follow your passion. And she was like, we'll make it work. Because I was always moaning about, mortgage and I can't do it because of this. And there was a million excuses. And she kind of finally told me just shut up and stop making excuses and to go and do it, and which I did. So where we are now.
And you know what she's saying? She's saying, Chris, this isn't you. I want my husband back. You're a positive, engaging guy, and right now you're miserable, and you're making everybody else around you miserable. So cut it out, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm always interested to ask people like yourself that have been you've been doing this for so long now. How do you constantly keep what you're doing fresh and keep yourself? How do you constantly disrupt Chester?
That's a great question. Adrian Gostick, my writing partner, my dear friend, I think we've become very good about listening, as you do with your roundtables and so on, listening to what your clients are struggling with, looking to see what your friends and family are struggling with, looking for what is the best thinking out there. And more than anything, asking yourself over and over again, how can I help? And it was interesting. Our journey from, employee recognition, which we enjoyed immensely, all the Carrot books, to taking a deep dive in culture, which is a much bigger canvas to paint on. And really, we look at it as the umbrella of our work, around leadership and teams, employee engagement and recognition all fall under that umbrella. Listening to the up and coming generations. One of the reasons we developed our online motivators assessment was to continually get that data and see what are the differences in generations, what are the differences in industries, what are the differences, are there gender differences, are there regional cultural differences? And I think when you're constantly feeding yourself that information and that data, and the conferences we speak at, one of the things I love about what I do is, one day I'll be speaking to a grocery store chain, and another I'm at a pharmaceutical, and then I'm at a bank, and then I'm at a food services, and then I'm at a hotelier. So you get those snapshots of the nuances that are out there. And yet, at the end of the day, it's so funny, because at the end of the day, people are people. And it's really interesting to me that the people issues that the hotels are struggling with are pretty much the same issues that the pharmaceutical guys are struggling with, that the restaurants are struggling with, and so on. And in a way, that's kind of reassuring that if you get the people part right, everything else will flow.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I spoke to a client about 2 hours ago, and they were saying to me, Chris, I really want to speak to other CHROs within, the food and beverage industry, because, they're going to understand my challenge. And I was like, your challenge, every single person across every single industry is telling me the same thing. Really? I'm like, yes, this isn't a food and drink issue, or this isn't an industry issue. This is a people issue, and it's transferable across everything. So they're like, yeah, you're right.
You could have that client talk to your wife that's now a new mother.
Exactly, you'll be fine. Before we go, I know that you've got a new book up and coming. I know it's still quite early to talk about it, but what can we expect from your upcoming book?
It's so, and thank you for asking. We're constantly writing, we're constantly researching, and we just saw a real need to really get back to creating a kind workplace. And so our book actually is called Leading with Gratitude, the 8 best practices of the best leaders we know that drive incredible results. This idea, again, of culture does start at the top. It does need to permeate throughout the organization. There's no question. And what the research told us, and what was really interesting that we discovered, is that leaders that led with gratitude were the leaders that attracted the best talent and had the best results. That the difference between good leaders and extraordinary leaders was never their hard skills. Isn't that fascinating? Like they had to know the industry well enough, right?
Yeah.
And you think about the great leaders that you worked with and for, the difference between the good leader and the extraordinary was always their soft skills, their ability to relate to people, the ability to inspire people, to engage people, to get somebody to laugh, right? And number one in those soft skills was gratitude. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
That they were grateful for the positions they had. They didn't take it for granted. They didn't lord it over people. They were grateful for the sacrifices of the people that worked with and for them. They were grateful for the opportunity to make a difference. They were willing to invest emotionally in their people. And so the book actually is in 3 sections. The first section is debunking leading with gratitude, that fear is the best, motivator, that it's all about the paycheck. And then getting into these 8 best practices of seeing people for really who they are, assuming positive intent. And then the third section, which we're really excited about, is take it home. These are principles that apply at work. There's no question. We have almost a database of 1 million engagement surveys and motivators assessments. Our research is rock solid. Why would you leave all that great learning about being grateful for people, being appreciative of people, building great cultures? Why would you leave that at work and not bring that home to the people that mean the most to you? So our new publisher is HarperCollins Business. We couldn't be more delighted. It doesn't come out until March. So
I know. I got a bit excited and carried away, guys. Listening, I was like, I want to give you guys a sneak peek of what's happening.
I will tell you, though, that people that lead lives of gratitude lead better lives in every aspect of their lives. And so we're delighted to bring some of these insights, some of these best practices, dispel some of the myths, and help people take it home. So thank you for asking.
It's hugely important as well. Thank you for sharing. And as someone who, myself, I suffer from anxiety. And one thing that's massively helped me with that is having an attitude for gratitude. And in the morning, I do my affirmations and I talk about what I say out loud and in my head, what I'm grateful for whilst I'm brushing my teeth and walking around, whilst I'm changing Robin and giving her some food in the morning. And it really puts things into perspective for you. Because sometimes you could always worry about what you don't have or what you're trying to chase, and you forget about what you do have around you. Whether it's family, whether it's water you can pour out of a tap, right? Or of just being able to spend time with my family and the house be over our head, a nice job, whatever it may be. We don't think about those things, and for me, that's been one of the biggest game changers for me, both as a leader, but also as a husband, as a dad, as a friend. So I think it's hugely important.
I'll share a little something. I love that you shared your beginning of the day with your positive affirmations. My wife and I have a wonderful tradition. At the end of the day, we say, well, what are your 3? What are 3 things that you're grateful for today?
Yeah.
And, it'll be with friends or whatever. And sometimes there are more than 3. There's 5 or 7, right? And then, we're very much a family of faith. And we say, and where did you see the hand of God in your day to day? Where did you give back? Where did you feel that you were making a difference? And it's just a wonderful tradition. I encourage, our listeners to, because what you're talking about is we have first world problems.
Yes.
There are people in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like you said, that they can't turn on a tap and get clean water. Like they're wondering if they're going to eat today. So you got to step back and say, hey, listen, we're the luckiest people on the planet. Not to trivialize our problems, we need to go solve them. In the grand scheme of things, 99% of the world would trade places with you and me in a nanosecond.
I know. Well, look, Chester, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's been a real pleasure. And as I said, it seems like a bit of a whirlwind from me in being as a teenager in my first job and seeing you on stage and doing an incredible keynote at the summit to where we are now. It's been amazing to watch you on your journey. And I really appreciate you coming on to share your insights and experience with our listeners.
Well, listen, it's a delight to see your success and your passion and all the wonderful things you're doing too. I mentioned I'm going to be in the UK in November, and I am going to pack an extra carrot for your little.
Definitely.
It'll be great. It'll be awesome.
Well, if you could bring 2, because I'd love one for the shelf. I've got to have one. I've got to get a carrot on this shelf. I have to have it.
Absolutely. You know what? I'm going to bring 3. One for your wonderful new child, one for yourself, and one for you to give to somebody else.
Oh, amazing. Oh, that's going to be a tough decision now, whoever's going to get that. All right. Well, look, before we wrap up, I always ask this question. If there's, one parting piece of advice you could give to the leaders out there that are listening today, what would that be? And also, what's the best way for them to reach out to you if they want to learn more about your work or get in contact with you?
Yeah, I think it's back to the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated. I saw a sign the other day that was updated for the digital world. It says, tweet someone the way you would like to be tweeted.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think this idea of let's remember to be kind. Assume that positive intent, and assume people are trying to do a good job, and let's jump to that positive intent quicker to the negative intent. I think the world needs more gratitude. It needs more kindness. We read so often of the online bullying, the political discourse that just gets so acerbic and so just mean. Where in reality, there are so many good people out there doing so many good things. You are evidence of that. Your goodness just radiates. Most people are like that.
I know. Yeah, we just hear on social media about all of the other negative stuff, unfortunately, as opposed to the positive.
Right. So assume that positive intent. I love the idea of a random act of kindness every day. I think it's a wonderful best habit, whether you're giving a few coins to the beggar on the street or calling an old friend to comfort them, or even writing a little note. Just those little random acts of kindness, I think, again, it's better to give than to receive, and we always receive back. As far as our work goes, thecultureworks.com is where you reach our training company. We've got wonderful training around culture, around employee engagement with our motivators assessment. Follow us on LinkedIn. We're constantly posting little videos and little tips and tricks. And we have a saying, and I think you'll appreciate this, Chris, that the more books you buy, the more books you'll own. So please feel free to buy as many books as possible.
Do they have to get all 7, or is it 8 now? It's going to be 8 soon, right?
Well, actually, this book that we're working is our 11th book.
Oh, 11th. Sorry, I can't keep up now. Okay. All right.
Buy the book All In. Buy the Best Team Wins. Pre-order your book on Leading with Gratitude. And by the way, my wife will thank you. My grandchildren will thank you. And more than that, my bank will thank you, because it'll be assured that we'll make the mortgage again this month.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much, Esther, for joining us again. For everyone listening, as always, guys, if you head over to hrleaders.com, you'll find the show notes from the episode. Everything that's mentioned will be linked in there. Can I also link to the assessment? Is that all right? Can we do that?
Absolutely. Tell them to drop us. Go to thecultureworks.com. you can buy the assessment there. We actually sell them.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what I'll do, though. If they will contact me at chester@chesterelton.com, this is probably pretty dangerous because you have 10 million people are going to listen. I'll arrange a special code for you. We'll get you a Chris Rainey discount.
Okay, amazing. There we go, guys. That was on the fly, by the way. That wasn't planned. So we made it happen. Well, apart from that, thanks again, Chester. And I wish you all the best until we next speak. Hopefully I get to see you in London when you're over.
I plan on, I'm sorry I missed you when you were in the lovely state of New Jersey. So we need to get some one-on-one time in. And Chris, thank you for all you do to make workplaces better. I love your enthusiasm. I love watching your success. Keep doing it because you are making a difference, and we should all be appreciative of that.
Fantastic. Well, look, I'll let you get on with your day, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thanks a lot, Chester.
Cheers, my friend. Bye.
Bye.